Hello, my name is Garvey House, and I'll be your instructor for this course, Research 665 Statistical Analysis. In this presentation, I'm going to present an overview of the entire course, including the curriculum, the software application that you will use to conduct your data analysis, how your assignments are structured and expectations for them, how to use your textbook and other resources. I'll touch on the final project, but rest assured that we'll talk about that more in detail later in the course. I will also offer some success strategies and then point you to the course policies. So let's get started. Why take statistics? I think if you ask someone on the street who has completed college, a bachelor's degree, and they had taken a stat course, and you ask them, what is the course that you had the most difficulty in? Oftentimes they would say statistics. It is a very different kind of course than what you may have experienced in other programs, but rest assured the content that we're covering is the same content that you would encounter in a sophomore level applied statistics, introductory statistics course. That said, it's still a new language for many of you. If you've had a stat course before, then I think you'll be surprised that a lot of this will be familiar to you. If you haven't had a stat course and you have some apprehension, I understand that. I was very apprehensive when I took my first stat course, but I'm going to be here to help you. So the value proposition. This is my value proposition about taking a stat course or requiring a stat course at Embry-Riddle. It is to prepare aviation and aerospace professionals to ask empirical questions, apply appropriate research methods and data analysis techniques to inform decisions. My hope is that after you have completed your program and you're applying the things that you have learned, that you're going to be able to make evidence-based decisions. That is, decisions that are data-driven and that you have trust in the data and that you understand how to interpret it. I also hope that you will improve your information literacy. So what is that? Well, it's basically being able to search for information efficiently and effectively. I hope that your new friend will be google.com. And why is that? One discipline that is very well represented on the internet and has been for many years is statistics. Everything that we cover in this course can be found on the internet. There are all kinds of resources, and I would prefer that you focus your searches to .edu websites. But whichever website that you select, just like anything, you have to assess its value and its validity. Another part of taking statistics is being objective, unbiased questions that you ask, methods, analysis, interpreting the data, and evaluating the statistical outcomes. This is an element referred to as critical thinking. So I want you to be able to ask good questions. I'm reminded of a quote from Charles Kettering, who was quoted to say, "A problem well stated is a problem half solved." So therefore, it is important for you to ask good questions. And what does it mean to ask a good question? Well, one is that you're asking one that can be answered and that it is clear and that it is variable driven and that you're asking questions about the relationship among things. So we'll get into asking good questions such as research questions and stating hypotheses. Another reason to take this course is to prepare you for your capstone project. Many of the assignments, not all of them, but many of them, I'm asking you to develop them in a particular way. And in order to support you, you will find assignment templates for every assignment in this course. And we're going to cover that in just a few minutes. So let's talk a little bit about the difference between this type of course, which is applied statistics, versus statistics that you would find in the Department of Mathematics or in some universities, a Department of Statistics. In an applied statistics course, we're using models that rely on probabilities, and they are applied to particular kinds of real life situations. So therefore, they're context dependent. You're doing statistical analysis inside of a context in which these data are located. You also need to develop methods that are clear and replicable. The value of any empirical research is the degree to which it can be replicated. Therefore, in your method section, it needs to be written at a level of detail such that someone else could take your final project and replicate it without having to ask any questions about how to do it. All of the techniques that we will use in this course require measures. They require data. It also requires you to interpret the data and interpret statistical outcomes. So how do you know when there is a significant difference or that two variables are significantly related? And then finally, it's important that you understand how to evaluate statistical outcomes and then assess the degree to which those outcomes are generalizable. Now, in a theoretical statistics course, this would be something that you would find in a Department of Math or Department of Statistics. It deals in abstract concepts. They deal with propositions and proofs of theorems. It's typically calculus-based. It uses deductive logic. And there are limitations to what theoretical statistics can provide. So let's review the topics that are covered in this course. You'll see on the left side that there's an arrow that begins at general. In the middle, it's specific. And then at the end, it's applied. The first few topics in this course are general in nature. It's an introduction to StatCrunch, which is the software application that you're going to use. And then you're also going to cover three types of experimental designs: the true experimental design, quasi-experimental design, and the non-experimental design, also known as correlation. So those are the foundations of statistics, especially in applied statistics. You have to have a context in which to conduct applied statistical research. We're going to cover descriptive statistics, which are measures of central tendency and variability. And we're going to look at this concept called a normal distribution. And you will understand how important a normal distribution is and how frequently measures that you encounter in everyday life are normally distributed, such as height and weight. Towards the middle, we're going to cover correlation and regression and statistical inference. So correlation and regression are two sides of the same coin, but they're used for different purposes. And we're going to study about statistical inference, and that is, how can you infer the results of a study to a population? We're going to cover confidence intervals, which are estimates of population parameters. And then the t-test, the dependent t and the independent t. These are one-factor tests with two levels. For example, what is the difference between female and male pilots on GPA or some other kind of dependent measure? We're going to increase the level of complexity with ANOVA. In this assignment 6.3, you're going to compute a one-way analysis of variance that has three levels to it. So the difference between t-test and ANOVA in the terms of this course have to do with the number of levels, whereas we're not going to study factorial analysis of variance, but you will need to understand what that is and how it's used. A factorial analysis of variance uses more than one factor, more than one independent variable. We're going to move to chi-square and study two different types of frequency analyses. One is called the goodness of fit, and that is one variable with two or more levels. And then the chi-square test of association, also known as the chi-square test of independence. This is the association between two nominal level variables. Both of these models are frequency analyses. So they're using counts of things rather than measures of things. And the latter part of the course is going to be more applied to your final project, and it creates a foundation for them. So we're going to understand how to compute a power analysis to determine the sample size. And then how do you select the right kind of statistical test depending on the type of data you have and the kind of question that you're answering. And then finally, you'll have a final project and a final exam. The final project and the final exam are comprehensive in nature. So it's going to cover all of the modules beginning with Module 1 through Module 8. And they're about statistical concepts and applications on the final exam. There are 10 short answer questions, and you have 3 hours to complete it. Since I've been teaching the course, no one has ever needed extra time. Briefly about StatCrunch, all you need to do is to go to statcrunch.com, select subscribe/get access. You're going to want to select to purchase a license for 6 months at $13.75. This is a web-based application. You will not need to download anything onto your computer. If you are familiar with Excel, it's set up similarly to Excel. However, there are menus that drive the statistical techniques. You don't have to write code or do any kind of programming. It's drop-down menus, and you just select the kind of statistical procedure that you need to answer a problem. There are lots of videos on StatCrunch. So go to YouTube and search for StatCrunch, and you'll see Webster West, who is, I don't know if he's still teaching, but he was at Rice University in Houston, Texas, and developed a lot of statistical applications, and many of them are web-based. I would like to discuss a little bit about your assignments. As I mentioned earlier, there are assignment templates for every assignment in this course, and the expectation here is for you to use them. The reason that I provide assignment templates is to ensure that you are going to cover everything that I need to evaluate your understanding. These templates also, in many cases, mirror the organization of a research article, and I'll show you a little bit about that in a few minutes. There's also a document called the APA table templates. The expectation throughout this course, beginning with assignment 1.5, is for every table and figure that you produce for the assignments must be formatted according to APA 6th edition. The good news is that I've already done all this for you. Every table that you will need in this course can be found in that document, and I expect all the students to be using that document. You can certainly develop your own tables, but you're going to be evaluated on the degree to which they are correctly formatted. So you don't need to learn anything. All you need to do is to copy and paste the table that I produced for you into your document, and then add the statistical information in it. There's also a document called Rounding Rules, and I expect everybody to use that as well. And why is that? If you have a table that has data in it that have 8 or 10 decimal places, it is very confusing. Also, if the data, the raw data, are, let's say, at 1 decimal point, then at most you would want to use 2 decimal points. If you use more than that, then your outcomes are beyond the precision of the measurement instrument. So there are some very standard rules, and I expect everybody to use that rounding rules document. Once you get the hang of it, you don't need to refer to it. Writing style. May come as a surprise that you would be evaluated on writing in a statistics course, but part of this course is to prepare you to write your capstone project. Um, there is a particular type of writing style that you will use. It is the technical style, and there is some very good documentation in the Purdue OWL APA website, and I have resources to that throughout the course. And also want you to write in third person. I do not want you to write in first person. I do not want you to use pronouns, especially we, because there's only you that will be doing this, so there's no we. And I'll give you some feedback on your writing throughout the course, because I want you to get to your capstone project with the training and skills to write it and get that behind you. I want you to cite your sources using APA form and style. I want you to be objective about your interpretation of data. And what I mean by that is don't go beyond what the data can offer. And do not offer your opinion unless you're an expert. Stick to what the data can support and don't go beyond that, even if you have a gut feeling about something. And then finally, use evidence-based decisions. That is, the decisions that you make are going to be rooted in the data that are available to support it. There's one way to look at the organization of this course in terms of 3 constructs. One are the statistical concepts, measures of central tendency, measures of variability, uh, uh, probability, those kinds of concepts. And then we're going to apply these concepts to real life kinds of situations. And then finally, how you communicate your results are about as important as the accuracy of your results. Because you're going to be using StatCrunch, then accuracy really isn't an issue. And that's why I expect everybody to be using StatCrunch unless you have another statistical application that you're familiar with, SPSS, SAS, JumpIn, R. There's a whole bunch of them. But I will be able to support you on StatCrunch, and if you're going to be using SPSS or R, I can help you out there. But it's probably best just to keep it with StatCrunch because it's very straightforward. A moment ago, I was talking about the organization of assignments, and what I'm going to talk about briefly now is that this applies to the assignments at the bottom here, 3.5, 4.2, 5.3, 6.3, 7.3, and 7.4. And the assignment templates are organized similar to what you would find in an empirical study. There's a background, a method, your data analysis, the results, conclusions, and then your references. The background is pretty easy because that's the problem that's stated in the assignment. And what I'd like for you to do is just to paraphrase it as best you can. Then you're going to talk about your method. What are the steps that you took in order to compute your results? And then I will provide some detail about how to organize those results. You're going to start with very general statistical outcomes such as descriptive statistics, and then move forward into greater levels of detail. And then your conclusions, which will include an evaluation of your statistical outcomes. And then finally, references. So do not cite your textbook. Textbooks are not scholarly peer-reviewed sources. Anybody can write a textbook as long as you can find a publisher to publish it. You don't need anyone's review because those are reviewed by publication editors, not by academic scholars. Therefore, your references that you would use in this course are going to be scholarly, peer-reviewed references that you will access through the Hunt Library, and I can also provide some direction for you as well. Here's an example of the Assignment 5.3 template. You'll see that I have some major headings there: background, method, results, assess normality assumption, assess the equivariance assumption, and then your conclusions. You'll also see some notes that I have in there, and uh, they appear to be bullet points, but I want you to write in a coherent prose paragraph, not in bulleted lists. But these lists are just to ensure that you're capturing everything. So in your method, discuss how you justify the type of t-test that you're going to use. Um, is it going to be a directional or non-directional hypothesis test? And what alpha level are you going to use to test the null hypothesis? Unless stated elsewhere in this course, all alpha levels are at p equals or alpha equals 0.05. You will not change that in order to make your results statistically significant. You have to set alpha at the beginning of a study. You do not set alpha after you've completed the study. Otherwise, we would have some very unusual uh, processes to follow, and our understanding of the world would be considerably different. I'm just pointing here, you can take this website down and resource it later, but what it talks about is the organization of an empirical quantitative research article: the introduction, the method, results, discussion, and conclusion. Those 5 things are consistent in nearly all empirical research. And this is the method that you will follow in many of your assignments. So let's talk a little bit about expectations. And I am a big proponent of writing for clarity and understanding. As I mentioned earlier, you're going to use a technical style versus a narrative style. A narrative style is like, I'm going to talk about what I did on my summer vacation. I went to the beach and I went to the whatever. Um, this is not about you. You're trying to report statistical results in an unbiased manner. And there is a deeply rooted historical foundation of empiricism around quantitative research, and it must be objective. And the researcher is independent of the research that is being conducted. you will write in third person singular versus first person. Uh, you should write to communicate effectively and efficiently. There's a great article by George Orwell that he published in 1945 called Politics in the English Language. You can find this anywhere on the internet, and I have a copy of this article in one of the modules. Um, Everything about it applies to this course. Um, One of the things that you're going to learn in terms of writing is how to make your writing tight, how you eliminate words that really don't add any meaning. My doctoral advisor shared with me some very sage information once. It's what he always uses, and when we would work together on projects, he would say, "Do you really need this word?" And we would be marking out words until meaning was lost. So we'd continue marking out words and retaining the meaning. So he was trying to teach me how to write more tightly. And so I will give you feedback if I think that you're using too many words. And when that happens, it can create some confusion and interfere with comprehension by the reader. All of your tables and figures must be in APA format. Do not copy and paste tables from StatCrunch. They are not APA compliant. Uh, Use the APA table templates document and copy and paste the table from there, and then put your numeric summaries inside of that table. You can, however, copy and paste figures from StatCrunch. Figures are things like histograms, QQ plot, scatter plot. They're images. They're not numerical summaries. Those are tables. And then the form and style guide would be to follow the APA Publication Manual 6th edition. And I understand that all students are required to purchase this, and therefore I assume that you have it and you can reference it. You can also use the Purdue OWL APA guide, and there are a lot of really good information in there. I want to point out that Excel is not a statistical application. It's a spreadsheet, and I do not want you using Excel because you're going to be missing out on some of the things that StatCrunch does natively. For example, if you're trying to compute a t-test or an analysis of variance or a correlation, yeah, you can do that in Excel if you know how to write the code for it. But you also have to write code for testing the assumptions and doing post hoc tests. And why learn how to code all that when you have a very straightforward application like StatCrunch to do it for you? So um, use StatCrunch unless you have a different kind of statistical application like SAS or SPSS or R. Yep, to reinforce, you're going to use StatCrunch. You're going to organize your uh, statistical write-ups according to the assignment template, which follows the background method assumptions, results, evaluation, and conclusions. I want you to be objective, not subjective. Subjectivity is a different type of research design that we're not going to cover in this course, and that's qualitative research. You're going to be writing in the technical writing style rather than the narrative, and you're going to use the assignment templates because then you don't have to guess about what I am going to be looking for. And there are rubrics for every assignment. I expect you to read that rubric before you submit your assignment because that is what I use to evaluate your work. So be sure that you peruse that rubric carefully, and that will inform you about everything that I'm going to use to evaluate your work. Your textbook is a good starting point, and I think it's a good book Um, but you may require other resources. I know that I did. When I was in my graduate program, I went to the library and there was a section of the library that was about statistics, and I'd pull down 5 or 10 books until I found the book that really connected with me on a particular type of statistical analysis. What you will discover if you go to the library and pull down statistics books is that they may cover the same topics, but they're going to write about them in different ways, and they're going to use different nomenclature, different Greek symbols, and it can be kind of confusing. But uh, the internet and a library are very good resources for you. I want you to kind of gloss over the statistical calculations. I do not expect you, nor do I want you to be spending your time doing manual calculations. There's too much room for error. This is not the way that you do it in real life. You need to learn how to use a statistical application. And I don't want you to get mired and confused about statistical formulas. We may reference them in a very high level way, but the expectation is to not use manual calculations, but rather to use StatCrunch. Leverage the power of the internet. And as I mentioned earlier, YouTube has some great videos. I have created videos for most of these assignments, and what I have done is taken a problem that's very similar to the assigned problem for a particular module, and I go through it in great detail. So this is probably, or these resources are probably something that you would want to access, and I have links to them in the course. A strategy for using your textbook is to read the chapter and the resources before you attempt the assignments and discussions. I know that depending on your style, that you may want to wing it. Maybe you have good familiarity with it, but I think it would be a good idea to ground yourself in the material in the textbook, again, glossing over any type of statistical calculations. Focus on the conceptual aspects of the uh, models that we're discussing. One of the things that I used to do when I was having difficulty with homework assignments, I would replicate the worked examples using a particular statistical application. So there are some worked examples in your book, and one way that you can approach this is rather than doing it by hand, do it using, replicate the worked examples using StatCrunch. If you're still experiencing problems, you may need to work a few practice problems, especially those that have answers in the back of the book. Again, review the rubric before you submit the assignment, and then follow the assignment template. Very briefly about the final project. That project is referenced beginning in Module 8, and Assignment 8.5 is about how and why you selected the statistical test that you're going to use in your final project, and you're going to need to test the assumptions. So what does this mean? It means you have to have the data in Module 8 before you're actually going to do the final project in Module 9. So just a shot over the bow there that getting close to Module 8, probably around mid-week in Module 7, I'll reach out to everybody and point you to the databases that I've already developed for you. You don't have to use them, but I would strongly encourage you to get approval for a database that you're going to use that's other than what I have provided for you. You need to use secondary data only. You may not go and collect data yourself. There's some really good reasons for it. One is that you have to have IRB approval, and that could take a month, and you don't have a month in here. Also, to collect your own data, you'd have to have an instrument, and it'd have to be a valid and reliable instrument, and you just don't have time for that. That's why that I've already created the data for you. There is an assignment template for the final project, and this is basically a dry run for your capstone project. It's not as detailed, it's not as long, but it has a lot of the characteristics of your capstone project. And again, I recommend that you use the data sets that you'll find in Module 8 that I've already created for you. So here are some success strategies. Prepare before attempting the assignments. That means you need to do your due diligence in reading the textbook readings. You may need to go out on the internet and shore up some of your misunderstandings of concepts or procedures. You may need to work some practice problems. And then about the cadence. This is not a course where you wait until the day the assignment is due to do all of your reading and do all the homework. Your brain needs to process this information. And there is a huge literature in psychology around mass versus distributed practice. Mass practice is like cramming for an exam the night before. It just doesn't work because it relies on rote memory. And rote memory is not a way that concepts will be retained. And it's very difficult from rote memory to integrate that concept with other aspects of the course that you're studying. I would select 3 days out of the week where you're going to do your reading, you're going to review and prepare for the assignment, what other kinds of resources might you need. You're going to read the assignment template, you're going to read the rubric, and then on that 3rd day, you're going to complete your assignment. It would be very good if you would build in an extra day. Maybe it's the day that the assignment is due, and give your assignment 24 hours to rest, because while you're working on an assignment, you're focused on different kinds of things, and maybe clarity isn't one of them. And when you come back 24 hours later and read it, you want to be sure that your writing is clear and coherent. I expect everyone to have questions in this course. If you're not asking questions, then I am concerned. I think everyone will have opportunities to ask questions about the content that we're covering. So post them in the virtual office. And that's really my preferred method of you asking questions. And why is that? Because when you're asking a question, I would suggest that 50% or more of the class is asking the same question. So ask your question and post it in that virtual office, which is at the very top of the list of discussions. And that way everybody can read your question, read my response to it. And it gives everybody visibility and to your questions and my feedback. I would ask that you only use email to me for personal matters, matters that are related to the course, not necessarily, you're not looking for counseling, so to speak. But if there are some issues that you need to discuss, I would just pick up the phone and call me. Calling me, I think we can solve a lot of problems. And sometimes you may not know enough to even ask a question, and you may be a little embarrassed to uh, ask a question, and that's okay. But I mean, it has been for me sometimes, especially when I was first learning statistics. You don't know what you don't know. But post the questions that you feel comfortable posting in that virtual office, and really use the private email for more personal matters. There are course policies for this course. When you uh, go to the landing page, there is a Start Here embedded link that will take you to the syllabus and uh, a guide on plagiarism and all other kinds of things. And then the next page is the instructor bio, so you know a little bit about me and all of the expectations that I have in this course, such as no direct quotes and when your assignments are due and how to ask for an extension on an assignment and what is my position on course extensions and so forth. I expect you to read all of that thoroughly. And finally, here's my contact information. I live in Galveston, Texas. I'm in the Central Time Zone. There's my phone number, 409-750-0170, and you are welcome to text me. My Embry-Riddle email address is housew1@erau.edu. I think I have an alias garvey.house@era.edu. I think that works as well. I have office hours Tuesday and Thursday from 10 till 2 Central Time. If I happen to be busy on another call, I please leave a brief message, who you are. I'll probably get your telephone number from caller ID, and then just let me know when to call you back. And then if you're unable to meet during office hours, I'm more than happy to arrange a time that is going to be convenient for both of us. I typically do not take calls after 7 p.m., but if there are some unusual circumstances, then I'm certainly happy to work with you. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask. Best wishes on your success in this course.